Miss Archer. I trust you're recuperating suitably?
Quite so, Mr. Jones. Thank you for the champagne.
It's a tradition I began back in the war, to reward my boys for a mission well done. It pays to have friends in the supply department.
So, does that mean I'm one of the boys?
I suppose it does. Figuratively speaking, of course.
Of course.
Miss Archer, I realize I have been somewhat abrasive during this ordeal.
You've been a belligerent oaf.
I hope you can understand that I take our collective purpose very seriously. Although I was highly skeptical of a woman's ability to handle this mission, I am overjoyed to have been proved wrong. You have gone above and beyond the call of duty in this matter, for which we are all indebted to you.
I wish we could offer you a proper vacation, but until Unity is full strength again, I'm afraid we can't afford to let you rest.
Thank you, sir, but I've waited a long time for a chance like this. I wouldn't dream of going on vacation now.
That's the spirit. Well, I'm going to go home and see if my wife remembers me. See you both tomorrow.
I'd best be going too. I'm bathed in 3 days. I imagine I'm a bit ripe.
Is this how it ends, then?
How what ends?
Saving the world. That's what we did, right?
Yes, that is what we did.
Is it always like this? Weary farewells and shuffling off home for a hot bath and a good night's sleep?
A good night's sleep if you're lucky.
Yes, Agent Archer, it is always like this. Saving the world is our job, you see. If we do it properly, nobody even knows the world is in jeopardy to begin with. Not a lot of fanfare, I suppose. Just the satisfaction of a job well done.
An important job.
I like to think so. Good night, Agent Archer. Good night, Mr. Smith.
Good night.
You were right. Last night I slept peacefully for the first time since my father died.
How touching.
Tom?
You owe me more than you can imagine, Ms. Archer.
I thought you...
You have no idea what I put myself through, and I'm not going to get a dime for it thanks to you.
You're the traitor.
Hey, I'm not proud of what I did, but I was going to get a handsome paycheck as compensation. A very handsome paycheck. Unfortunately, you had to go and blow up my benefactor.
Money? You betrayed the entire free world for money?
Spare me the self-righteousness. Everybody has a price, even you.
You don't know anything about me.
Maybe not, but I've been in this business long enough to see what people are capable of. Anybody can talk about honor and patriotism, but those are just pretty words. When the money's on the table, the right amount of money, you'd be surprised how quickly you can change your tune.
Do you honestly believe that?
Of course I do. You know what a spy is? It's just some ordinary Joe who's willing to risk his life to sell out his country for a few measly bucks. We rely on these people. That's where most of our information comes from. The difference between them and us, other than our training as operatives, of course, is a price tag. Mine just happened to be about 100 times as much money. And now I get nothing thanks to you.
You're forgetting something, Tom. Those spies we recruit aren't patriots, they're cowards. We seek out selfish, hateful little people who place themselves above everyone else. We choose them because they're weak and greedy and arrogant, like you.
Touché.
Don't you understand what you did? People died because of you. Bruno died because of you.
Hey, Volkov killed him, not me. All I did was supply some information. I'm not responsible for how that information was used.
We'll see what the court thinks about that.
I didn't come here to surrender.
Pity for you.
Yes, there's that big, well, one of the big twists that I was talking about. Tom is not actually dead. Turns out he was actually the traitor all along. Or maybe at least one of the traitors. Don't worry, there's actually going to be another surprise coming in after this boss fight. Come on, show your ugly little face. Yeah, I feel like this is going to be a long boss fight. But then I am kind of low on health, so yeah, that's what I was hoping to avoid. And especially since I only have a single handgun, not really a good idea to come, to face him one-on-one at close range, so I would prefer to stay back and shoot him at a distance. Exciting times! Very exciting times. Couple more shots should do the trick. I'm just gonna watch out not to get shot again.
Drop your gun.
Or what? Are you gonna shoot me in cold blood?
If I have to.
That's mighty tough talk for a little girl.
Mr. Smith, what are you doing here?
Tending to some unfinished business.
Mr. Jones?
Are you all right, Miss Archer?
What's going on?
There's your traitor.
You mean Smithy?
How long have you known?
I've suspected you for some time. You've only just now confirmed my suspicions.
All this time you thought he might be a traitor?
Indeed, but I had to be sure.
You might have warned Bruno.
He did.
Bruno?
Look out!
Everyone okay?
Good shooting, Archer.
But what about Tom?
Tom Goodman died in Amsterdam.
What? But I thought...
The man you knew as Tom Goodman was an imposter. His real name was Melvin Blitzney. He's a former vacuum cleaner salesman from Akron, Ohio.
I don't understand.
It's quite simple. 7 years ago, Mr. Jones took Smithy off the active list due to his increasingly inadequate performance in the field. Mandatory retirement came as a great blow. Smithy, like many operatives, thought of himself as a man of action. He viewed his reassignment to the role of an administrator as an insult to his virility. He kept his dissatisfaction to himself, secretly plotting to discredit Jones and, in the process, line his own pockets. To this end, he recruited Melvin Blitzney, who,
underwent plastic surgery, extensive training, and months of voice lessons in order to become Tom Goodman, for whom Smithy, meanwhile, laid a deadly trap in Amsterdam.
How did Smithy hook up with a vacuum cleaner salesman from Ohio?
Apparently, they met in a bar in Florida on one of Smithy's last assignments. Anyhow, with Goodman out of the way, and no one any the wiser, Smithy launched the next phase of his scheme, which was to nurture a relationship with an up-and-coming terrorist organization. He chose H.A.R.M. His plan was to create an international incident of staggering proportions and simultaneously cripple Unity so that we would have no choice but to capitulate. Such an unmitigated failure would force Mr. Jones to step down, giving Smithy control of Unity, and also a handsome payoff in a secret bank account in Zurich.
But what about Morocco?
It was a trap meant to snare us both. Mr. Jones and I agreed that it would serve as a perfect opportunity for me to disappear for a while.
You might have warned me, you know.
We couldn't risk tipping our hand.
You mean you didn't think I could keep a secret?
Keeping a secret wasn't enough. Smithy had to believe I was dead, which meant that you had to believe it as well. I'm truly sorry, Kate.
Oh, you will be. But there are still some things I don't understand. Smithy was extremely forthcoming with information for someone who wanted us to fail.
Every mission he sent you on was a trap. Eventually it occurred to him that you were far more competent than he had anticipated, but it was already too late by then. You'd outwitted him. Besides, if he'd attempted to conceal information, he would have drawn suspicion to himself, which he couldn't afford.
But why did Tom, or Melvin, whatever his name is, blow up the cargo freighter?
To get rid of you, of course.
But Inga Wagner and Magnus Armstrong were aboard the ship.
They were expendable.
If you knew all this, why didn't you just arrest Smithy and be done with it?
Because we didn't know all this until very recently. Your investigations revealed much of the information we needed. But the final piece of the puzzle fell into place yesterday afternoon, when I found this in Smithy's flat.
The puppet?
Indeed.
Unbelievable.
I'm sorry I had to deceive you, Kate.
Sorry is not good enough. Do you have any idea how devastated I was?
I should leave you two alone. I'm sure you've plenty of catching up to do.
You certainly looked sad.
What do you mean?
Well, I was watching when you came to pay your respects.
You were spying on me?
Not intentionally.
I ought to kill you myself. Who's buried here anyway?
No one. It's an empty casket.
An empty casket?
Calm down.
Don't run away from me. Come back and take what's coming to you.
Kate, please. You're overreacting.
I'll show you overreacting, you bastard.
Well, there you have it, guys. The ending to a pretty good game. I mean, it is fun, but it does get a bit stale from time to time. But it has an incredible story, and like I said, twists, and more twists at the end there. And of course I was correct in thinking that Smitty was the actual traitor, not Bruno, but I did actually see I did watch a playthrough of this game before, so I kind of already knew that. But if you pay attention to the story and pay attention to the character, it's not too hard to tell. Because I've mentioned this on several occasions for both Tom and Smitty, how shifty they were acting and how they were always trying to they always try to get the attention away from themselves and onto somebody else, and that's just, you know, somebody who's innocent doesn't do that. So even though I already knew that, I did point out on several occasions how, you know, how awkward and how, I can't even think of the word right now, but you get the point. Basically, even if you obviously if you haven't played the game before, you wouldn't know, but it's because it's not too difficult to sort of guess who the traitor is. But, yeah. So it turns out, Tom not only is a lie, but he wasn't even who he says he was. The real Tom Goodman turned out to be dead, and the person we thought was our friend, who turned out to be a traitor, was actually an imposter who wasn't working with us wasn't even our friend to begin with. And also Bruno faked his own death in order to draw out the actual traitor who ended up being Smitty. So twists and turns everywhere, and that's actually why I love, maybe not love, but I really do enjoy spy stories, because you never know what to expect with them. It's not just a straight, it's not just like a linear thing where it's like, okay, you know exactly what's going to happen. It's not predictable. In spy stories, you can never know what to expect, because a lot of times, as proven by this game, by the end of this game, things are not always as they turn out to be, and a lot of times it may end up being completely different from what you thought they were. Not even just slightly off, but completely off of what you thought they were. But, yeah, so that was No One Lives Forever, the first game in the technically trilogy.
I'm afraid I have bad news. I'm already aware of the situation, Dimitri. No matter. We'll just have to do better next time, won't we?
And yes, like I said, that whole... throughout the game, all those drunken fat fools with the martini glass who kept acting like they were innocent and falling over like they were drunk. And I've mentioned several times that that was the director. Well, there you have it. There's the big reveal that he is indeed the director of H.A.R.M. Which also not prove, but also, as Felicity said, that H.A.R.M will not die with her. She meant that the actual person who's leading H.A.R.M was actually still alive, and that was him. And yes, Volkov is also still alive, which, that part isn't exactly that surprising, because all we saw was just snow falling. We didn't actually see him die, and typically, if you don't see somebody die, well, that doesn't necessarily mean that they're actually dead. And actually, more often than not, if you don't see them die, you don't have proof of a body, then that person most likely is still alive. And, well, there you have it. Volkov is still alive, and we will get to face him again. We will be seeing him again in the next game. And like I said, so this is the first game in what is technically a trilogy, although a lot of people don't consider Contract Jack to be part of the No One Lives Forever games, since, well, one, it's not even called No One Lives Forever, so it's more of a side game than anything else, although, as I've mentioned before, it does bridge the gap between the two games. But also, a lot of people were disappointed with that game, and I feel like because sometimes when people think something is so bad that they don't even consider that to exist, and as such, a lot of people consider Contract Jack to be a pretty terrible game. Some say it even killed the series, which I never really understood that phrase. I think that phrase is stupid, because even if something is bad, it doesn't. If one thing is bad, like I can understand if multiple things in a series were terrible, and it dragged the entire series down because only one or two games in that series was good. But if only one thing out of an entire series is bad, how does that kill the whole series? I mean, you have multiple other games in that series that actually is good and, had good sales, everybody enjoyed that game, so how does one thing kill the entire series? It's just, it's a stupid line. But, in any case, I feel like some people probably don't don't think like they pretend that Contract Jack doesn't exist and as such isn't part of the series, but it is. And honestly, from what I've saw, it's not a bad game. I mean, I didn't play it yet. Obviously, I'm going to play it after this game, so that is going to be my next playthrough, my next Let's Play. But even though it's not the whole spy and sort of like, you know, stealth oriented, it's more of an action, it's more just a straight up shooter, it still looks pretty interesting, and there's a few interesting levels in that game. But anyway, it's enough of my rambling. Hope you guys enjoyed the game, and after the next epilogue level, I'll be seeing you in the next game. So, yeah. See you guys then.